Thanks for joining us again here at Illuminated. I'm Jim Garfield with IVI IPO, and we're joined with our next candidate who's been endorsed by IVI, Chakena Perry.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for joining us today. Now, you are running for Metropolitan Water Reclamation District,
Yes.
but, and this is a weird one, normal terms are 6 years. You're running for a 2-year seat.
That's correct.
Okay, so can you explain to me what happened there? Why is yours a 2-year seat, not a 6-year?
Absolutely. So last year, Deborah Shore, she was a commissioner at the Water Reclamation District. She got tapped by President Joe Biden to go do bigger and better things to work for the Environmental Protection Agency. And so when she left in November, that opened a vacancy on the Water Reclamation District Board. And Governor J.B. Pritzker had the constitutional authority to appoint who that replacement would be on the board. So I was appointed in January, and I took Commissioner Deborah Shore's seat.
Okay, so this is to fill an unfinished term.
This is correct. So she had 2 years left on her term, and then because I was appointed during election year, I have to run to hold that seat this cycle.
Okay, so then if you do win this primary and then do win the general, you'd have to run again in 2 years.
That's correct.
Okay, now this is still a countywide seat, right?
It's countywide, so every single corner of it.
And you said you were appointed in January, right?
Yes.
And it is June.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get everywhere in Cook County that fast?
It means spending $75 each time to fill up my car because of the high gas prices right now. But honestly, it just means being every single place at any given time. So when there's large events going on, making sure I'm in there, shaking hands, getting to know voters. That means going to forums. It means hosting community meetings, joining community meetings. And I can't be everywhere at one time, but definitely packing the schedule as much as possible on all sides of the county to make sure that folks know that I exist and that I'm on the ballot.
Now you mentioned forums. How much attention do forums for MWRD get?
So usually the ones that I've been involved in, I've kind of folded into with other candidates. So whether they're congressional candidates or judges, they kind of do general questions to allow us to, kind of share our platform and share what our office actually is about. So there's one actually coming up in Beverly next week when I'm joining a bunch of different candidates from assessor to congressional to judges. So they usually tailor their questions in that way so it can be a little bit more general.
Okay, so they have a lot of folks that are like, well, no one of these positions is going to draw a huge crowd, so let's pull all of them together. And
Yes, all in one room.
Well, but apparently it's very important work that's done at MWRD, right?
I think I have the most important job out of everyone, honestly. I think so.
Can you make sure that we have clean drinking water, or is that clean drinking water, or is it cleaned drinking water?
Cleaned drinking water.
Okay.
So essentially I think this is really oversimplified. For anything that goes down in the drain, we handle. Anything that comes out of the drain, that's your local water department that handles that. So we treat and clean wastewater and make sure that it gets back to you safely, and it gets back into Lake Michigan safely as well.
So the Beverly Department of Water, you're in Beverly, you turn on the faucet, that's Beverly's water department, right?
Well, City of Chicago.
Or City, oh, it's Beverly, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, so if anything comes out, that's the City of Chicago.
Okay, City of Chicago. If it's Glenview, let's say further out, Glenview, still in Cook County, comes out of the tap in Glenview, it is Glenview's water department.
That's correct.
And Glenview Water Department cleaned it to come out of the tap?
Yep, so we both have our own separate processes when it comes to cleaning water. So we clean the wastewater, they clean the drinking water. So it's just a little cycle that's going on there, but anything that goes down in the drain just ends up into our water reclamation plants. And then it makes sure is that before it gets to that local water department, they go through another process before it gets to, the local household to be able to use properly and healthily.
Okay. Now you said, so again, we were talking about how you were appointed in January. What were you doing before this?
So before being appointed, I was actually working at MWRD. I was a staffer for another commissioner. I actually celebrated 3 years at the district in January, a few days before I got appointed. So it's pretty cool to just be on the other end of it now. So being the staffer, being the person who's building the vision of said commissioner, being able to execute on the project priorities that they have. Always been a lifelong learner. I think when I ended up at MWRD a few years ago, I was just bombarded with a bunch of information. information about an agency that a lot of people don't know exists. And I was just really, I fell in love with environmental policy and green infrastructure development. And that led me to pursue and complete a master's degree in public policy from the University of Chicago. I actually just had my graduation on Sunday.
Congratulations.
I appreciate you. So yeah, it's just like a really cool full circle moment, and just really taking the information that I acquired as a staffer and now, being the divisionary as a commissioner and trying to figure out what those priorities are and how I want to tackle them.
So what are those priorities for you right now? What is it that what do you want to do as the commissioner?
Absolutely. So 2 years isn't a lot of time by any means, but I do think I've gotten the ball rolling on a few of these things. First and foremost, flood mitigation. So the Biden administration just passed a very large infrastructure bill, and water infrastructure was a high priority with an environmental justice lens. So a bunch of municipalities, a bunch of states, Environmental Protection Agency, everyone is going to get millions of dollars to fund water infrastructure projects, MWRD included. So coming in the fall, we're going to having conversations about how that money is going to be allocated, what communities are we prioritizing, what type of projects are coming down the pipe that, no pun intended, that we want to be able to support.
I like that.
Not bad. I'm not really punny, but that just came out naturally. So flood mitigation is really important for me. I think there are communities throughout Cook County that are disproportionately impacted by flooding, and climate change is very much in our face right now. So it's important for us to bring communities up to speed to make sure that they're not, having flooded basements and flooded streets and impeding their quality of life. So that's one end. And then secondly, land use management. So updating our land use policy to better inform to whom and how we lease our land. Those are two main things for me right now, with a few other things in the mix. But
Well, actually, so let me ask real quick. You said to whom and how we lease the land.
Mm-hmm.
So MWRD owns land in Cook County.
that's correct.
And it uses it for its own, processing plants and for storage tanks of stormwater and other things. What other land does it own
Absolutely.
outside of those?
So we're, I think I want to say the second largest landowner. We own a lot of land. We currently have quite a few parcels that are vacant. And essentially, not to even drown this on too long, we have external entities that come to the MWRD and say, hey, we see that this land parcel is vacant. We would like to, build something on this land, or we want to store something here, or we want to develop this land into X, Y, and Z. And so right now, we're really reactive when it comes to our land use policy. When these entities come to us, as long as they're actually following the local municipal zoning requirements, they're free to bid on this land and, basically request that the Board of Commissioners approve them to lease that land. So right now, although we have a policy in place, it really doesn't align with our strategic vision of how our waterways should be used, in what ways should our land actually be used, whether it's recreational space, whether it's open green space. There's not really anything specific there, so anyone can essentially come and request our land. I'm asking that we update it so we can have more metrics and requirements in place that really align with our 5 and 10 year goals of rethinking the way our land is used.
Now, is it always lease or is it sometimes sale of the MWRD land?
Lease.
Okay, so if a developer came and said, I want to build, a condo building, what would the board do? If they're like, well, it's not yours to keep, it's a lease, it's not a purchase. How does that interact? How can you say, well, we're just not going to do that because it's not the kind of thing that we do. It's not the kind of project that we're allowed to have as a lease. How does that work?
So I actually haven't, so in my short time, I haven't actually seen like a developer in that way come to us. I can give you a different example that I can speak to a little bit more clearly.
Sure.
So for instance, on our board meeting agenda recently came an entity that wanted to use a parcel of land basically for truck storage. So we have a bunch of trucks. We want to create pavement to be able for these trucks to be able to come park here, to have a storage facility for supplies and that sort of thing. The main thing, nothing in our land use policy right now says that person can't lease this land. However, another thing that we take into consideration is like whether this this parcel of land is along our waterways, that will change the conversation a bit. But if it's not impeding our waterways, if they're not dumping, if they're not, doing anything that's polluting that area, then right now there's nothing really to say that this truck storage facility can't, build here, as long as the local municipality thumbs it up. So it comes to the board meeting essentially saying that X village is interested in, pursuing this project. We approve it. There's nothing wrong with it. As long as the MWRD is fine with leasing this, we can move forward with construction.
Okay. And then how did the MWRD come to kind of have all this land?
Mm-hmm.
Did it purchase it at some point? Is it? I mean, I don't know how it came to be that they became the second largest landowner in the county. So
that's a really good question.
Okay.
As a historian, I should probably know that. I actually don't know.
That's fair.
So these are really good questions that I need to go figure out. I just know for right now that we are, and then I'm trying to figure out how do we, make sure that moving forward, we're just really thinking critically about how we want to use lands and reimagining the way our neighborhoods are constructed moving forward.
Now, I noticed in doing research on you for our chat today that you mentioned a lot about clean energy, reusing materials that come through the system. What does that mean for you? What is reusing materials? Like what? How do you envision reusing, using that for clean energy? What are your clean energy goals?
Yeah, so I think exploring right now, that's one of my secondary priorities at the moment. I think once I run for the 6-year term, I'm right now in conversations with folks about, once again, thinking about our land, right? So we have water reclamation plants all over the place that have land adjacent to them that's currently vacant. So when we're thinking about solar energy, when we're thinking about wind energy, those are the type of priorities I'm thinking about. It's like, hey, we have land parcels that are vacant. How can we either restore that land to be able to be used for open green space? How can we ensure that nonprofit organizations that are interested in food insecurity, for instance, can have gain access to our parcel of land to be able to create urban gardens that can grow fruit and vegetables that they can then provide to community to help with food insecurity, or even thinking about bee pollinators. So how can we provide parcels of land to bee pollinators to help restore the current decline of honeybees? And so just thinking about those things, I think clean energy is another way in which we can use those land parcels. So as long as there's enough space to be able to do so, to create things pertaining to solar energy or wind energy, those are kind of the things I want to explore.
Okay. And do you think that there's good support for that at the board right now, or?
I think that from a land use perspective, yes, because we're currently in a process right now where we have a study session coming up shortly to discuss our land use policy. So we're currently, all of the commissioners, we've provided recommendations that we're going to actually sit down and kind of work through and kind of create a plan of what it looks like to implement some of these things. So we have a study session coming up soon. So fingers crossed that some of those recommendations are, are supported. But I even thinking about, just even moving forward, there are like plants currently that could be used for solar energy, right? So thinking about the roof of different plants, like how can we install solar energy, solar panels on those roofs to be able to reduce the cost of energy and increase energy efficiency. So there are a lot of different ways that I'm thinking about from a clean energy perspective.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. What is your punch number this time?
Oh, my punch number is number 91.
91.
Super excited. Harold Washington was number 9. I'm not alluding that I'm Harold Washington by any means, but if you love Harold, then just add a 1 and then you remember me.
There you go. All right. Well, so everyone, thank you so much. Make sure to vote for Chakena Perry for Commissioner of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District by punching number 91.
2-year term.
For the 2-year term.
All righty.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you.